Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is Vampiric Tokens. So yesterday I ran an Abzan token strategy that was basically using hidden stockpile and anointing procession to build up a lot of servos, get in for a lot of token damage, and basically just win by that outlet alone. As well as getting some life with Anointed Priest and things like that. But there is something to be said about Legion's Landing that was in the Abzan token strategy that is actually making a good shell for a vampire strategy here that can actually be a vampire token strategy. So this is what this deck is. But of course, before we get into the video, make sure to hit the like if you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell right beside the subscription button to know when we upload a new video on the channel and when we go live on the stream right here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting out at the 2 mana slot, we have 2 Bloodcrazed Paladin. Because we have 3 Fumigate in the deck and 1 in the sideboard, Bloodcrazed Paladin is going to be a great way to kind of gain momentum back once we have a situation where we have a wide board state, our opponent has a wide board state as well. Obviously, our 1/1s cannot compete against a bunch of 2/2s or 3/3s or 5/5s thanks to Naya Dinosaurs, things like that. So using a Fumigate and then paying 2 extra mana to get a Bloodcrazed Paladin out, to make it a 5/5, 6/6, 7/7, it could be anything, but it's a great way to gain some momentum back right after a giant sweep just like that. But of course, only 2 in the deck since we don't want to run into any of these too frequently. These are mostly a mid to late game kind of tempo swing. Moving on from Bloodcrazed Paladin though, we have 4 Maverick Fane Dusk Apostle. This is a 3 mana 2/2 legendary creature vampire cleric, and whenever one or more non-token vampires you control attack, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. So one of the things with this is that Maverick Fane actually triggers on himself, so if he gets out on the battlefield and then it wheels 1 turn, he attacks out, he can actually make a 1/1 vampire token himself. So having Anointed Procession on the battlefield with a Maverick Fane attacking in creates 2 1/1 vampire tokens. So it's a great way to kind of gain momentum over and over again, and a great way to also kind of use this as a situation to pull removal towards Maverick Fane, other than other things like either your servos on their side of the field if you have 1 and you're tapped out and you can't use it for a scry ability with hidden stockpile, things like that. But Maverick Fane is also a great way of just winning outright if they don't have an answer to it over and over again. Because there are 4 in the deck, it's unlikely that they'll have an answer for it over and over again, which is kind of awesome for us because every time he attacks out, he's going to be getting us more and more vampires. Sadly though, it doesn't get more vampires if it's just a token vampire attacking. It has to be non-token, so Maverick Fane, Bloodcrazed Paladin, and the next 2 cards we'll be talking about right here, which are Paladin of the Bloodstain. This is a 4 mana 3/2 vampire knight that when it enters the battlefield, it creates a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. So if there's an Anointed Procession on the battlefield, Paladin's going to come down and create 2 1/1s, which is actually quite good for 4 mana, and 2 of them are going to be having lifelink. So I think that's incredibly powerful. I think Paladin of the Bloodstain is going to be one of those cards that's like kind of undervalued in this deck here, but I think it's one of the cards that it gives you a lot of momentum because it does help rebuild your board after a board wipe from your opponent or a board wipe from yourself. It's just a great tempo gainer and a great way to say, hey, so you completely board wiped me, but I have a Paladin coming down. It's going to make himself a 3/2 and then a 1/1 and maybe an additional 1/1 or maybe even an additional 1/1 and use those 1/1s to be sacks for a hidden stockpile or maybe just to gain some life back in the mid to late game. Super fun. But moving on from these, that was 8 creatures. We only have 8 in the deck. Let's go on to spells here. We have 4 Fatal Push. Again, because this is a token strategy, we're going to have a lot of 1/1s dying thanks to hidden stockpile. Lots of revolt triggers going off. Fatal Push is going to be a premium removal card in the set for us. And in the way that the deck works, you can basically remove a 4 mana spell every single time we want to use a Fatal Push thanks to Evolving Wilds, Renegade Map, and again, hidden stockpile, as well as our 1/1 vampire tokens or our 1/1 servo tokens just dying outright. So Fatal Push is a stupidly powerful removal spell in that front. But moving on from Fatal Push, we have 3 Queen's Commission. So it was a 4 of here and then a 2 of, and then I think 3 is actually the sweet spot here. Queen's Commission is a 3 mana sorcery, create 2 1/1 vampire creature tokens with lifelink. So again, if we have an Anointed Procession, that's going to be creating 4. It's just a great way to gain momentum back in the mid to late game if they've board wiped you, and a great way to kind of get some hidden stockpile potential back for that scry ability that you need in the mid to late game. It's just a really solid card, and it's kind of like, it looks like, again, like it's not that powerful, but again, with all the other vampires we have with us that's getting us life, we can actually last a lot longer than our opponent than you think, and still be able to go as wide as our opponent too. So I think Queen's Commission is great for that. But moving on from Queen's Commission, we have 3 Fumigate. There's actually 1 in the sideboard as well, spoilers. But Fumigate's going to be a premium removal card for us. It's going to gain us life. It's going to destroy everything on the battlefield. Of course, it doesn't destroy anything with indestructible, so that's one problem we have to deal with. But Fumigate is a premium removals card that's going to work more often than not in our benefit. Even if we are a token strategy, being able to wipe our entire board board is not that big of a deal because we do build out rather quickly. But moving on from Fumigates, let's go to artifacts. We have 2 Renegade Map. Again, this is a great turn 1 play, coming in tapped, triggering Revolt on the next turn, giving us a mana, just basically thinning our deck 2 cards and being able to, you know, give us that Revolt trigger, which is very important. And then next up we have 1 Treasure Map. This could have been a 2 of here, and I kind of just went down to a 1 of because I like the Renegade Map more for the Revolt trigger, but I think Treasure Map here is actually quite good for scrying, just like that if we don't have anything on the battlefield for the hidden stockpile ability, but it also can flip and give us 3 treasure tokens for more Revolt triggers, as well as drawing cards as well, because whenever Treasure Map flips, it turns into Treasure Cove, which we can sack a treasure and tap that card and draw a card. And of course, if we have no procession on the battlefield, it makes multiple treasures for us, which is quite good too. So moving on from this guy, we have our enchantments. We have 4 Legions Landing. Because this is a vampire token deck, we want to make sure there's a full playset of this guy. It's a 1 mana legendary enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, we create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink, and when we attack with 3 or more creatures, we can transform it, and then that transforms into a land, Adanto the First Fort. You can tap it for 1 white mana, or you can tap it and pay 3 mana and get a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. So it's a great way to build out your board again if your board is being wiped, and if you have some anointing processions on the battlefield. Of course, it's turning into 2/1/1s, 3/1/1s, that kind of stuff. It's just quite good. Again, the goal of the deck is to make sure that we can kind of get as much damage out there as possible, but also be able to build as wide as possible, as quickly as possible. So Legion's Landing is going to help us do that. Moving on from this guy, we have 2 Argyle's Bloodfast. Because we have a lot of creatures, basically every creature in the deck having lifelink besides Bloodcrazed Paladin and Maverick Fane, we have a great way to get some extra card draw if we're kind of mana flooded, and a way to, if we have a low life, we can actually flip it and start getting some life back. But the real goal here is we don't want to ever flip Argyle's Bloodfast. We just want to be paying the 2 life and drawing a card for that sweet, sweet card advantage. And one of the things is this is not a tap ability, it's just an ability you pay over and over again. So being able to pay 4 life, draw 2 cards in the same turn, if you're going to gain 4 life back thanks to lifelink, is quite good. So I think Argyle's Bloodfast is a fun card in a vampire strategy like this. But moving on, we have 4 Hidden Stockpile. You know we need to include a 4 of. It is a great 2 mana enchantment. A Revolt at the beginning of your end step. If a permanent control left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 servo artifact token, and you can of course pay 1 colorless, sacrifice creature, and scry 1. So you don't want to be scrying 1 on your opponent's side of the field unless you'll be blocking and then sacking to get that scry, which is great. But on your turn, you want to be sacking, or maybe hopefully just using a Evolving Wilds or Renegade Map, something like that, to trigger that Revolt so you can get that extra servo token. And of course, if no processions on the battlefield, it makes 2 or 3 or 4, so on. Luckily for us, Hidden Stockpile is an enchantment that does not have legendary in the clause, so we can actually stack these guys pretty effectively. And it's a great card to be able to have our momentum kind of go forward as we're going throughout the match. So having one of these guys in our opening hand is probably a must, if not an always, and I just love it. Moving on from Hidden Stockpile, we have 3 Anointed Procession. Again, this could have been a 4 of, but again, the 4 mana for the Anointed Procession is quite high, and I think that the Queen's Commission is a little bit more highly valued in this matchup, just because we have a lot of things that have a lot of creature hate or a lot of removal in this set, and I think Anointed Procession, even though it does make our board go really wide, it can have the ability to kind of be a dead card in our hand if we draw into it. So having these guys in the mid to late game is more important for me, but having them in my opening hand is probably a bad idea. So Anointed Procession is good, but it's not great, and it does have the ability to kind of stall you out. If you draw into one in the mid to late game, you don't really need it. So I think it's amazing on turn 4, turn 5, but anything after that, really, you're kind of getting either cherry on top, either you're already winning, or you're drawing a dead card and you really don't need to be doing that. So that's why there's a 3 of and not a 4 of here. But next up, we have 3 Cast Out, which this could be a 4 of actually, but it is a premium removal spell for us, going to get rid of any kind of gods, any kind of Scarab God, Locust God, any kind of Planeswalker we don't like a Chandra or a Nissa or a Vraska or anything really, a Nico Bolas, whatever. When Cast Out enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent on the opponent's controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield, and of course has cycling for 1 white mana. So I can be happy to see this in my opening hand because I might be able to use it for a cycling draw, as well as a just ability to kind of hold up, say, okay, we're playing against this kind of deck, and so I want to make sure that I can use a Cast Out on a Glorybringer or a Bristling Hydra once it enters the battlefield if they don't have enough energy, that kind of thing. So I think Cast Out is great for that, but overall I do think it probably needs a 4 out of here, but again, I just couldn't decide what to take out. Maybe Treasure Map. I think Cast Out is amazing. But that is it for all the cards in the main board. Let's go on to lands here. We have 4 Concealed Courtyard, because of course we have one of the more expensive dual lands from Kaladesh here. Then we have 4 Evolving Wilds. This is going to help us kind of thin our deck for 1, and also trigger Revolt for Fatal Push and the Hidden Stockpile, which is great for us. It's going to slow our deck down a little bit, but that's fine because it does thin our deck and it does help trigger Revolt. We do have 2 If Cliff Near Deadlands, which is premium removal for us, and we do have 3 Sheffet Dunes, which is also our win condition, just like it was in Absent tokens. We can tap this, give everything +1/+1, and just swing for the win for 20 damage on 1 turn. I think that's fantastic. Then we have 4 Swamp and of course 6 Plains, and that is the full 60. Basically the strategy is to play out our Renegade map on turn 1, then turn 2 try to get out our Hidden Stockpile, then turn 3 Maverick Fane, and then kind of go on from there as much as we can. But this is a strictly vampire themed token strategy, so even though we have the Hidden Stockpile making servos, those are probably going to get sacked immediately for a Scry or a Revolt trigger. So we really want to be focusing on the vampires that have lifelink, kind of getting in turn over turn. So let's say we're up against like the mirror match, or let's say we're up against a heavy control strategy or heavy removal strategy. Let's go to the sideboard here. We have again 4 Duress, just like we had in the Abzan token strategy. 4 Duress here is almost a must in the strategy right now because there's just so much removal in the set. There's so much discard right now for the discard decks kind of rummaging around in MTGO, and there are a lot of cards just that control you. So you want to be getting Duress out as soon as you possibly can. If you get one in your opening hand, it's like Christmas on game 2. It's fantastic. Moving on from this, we have Fragmentize. Again, the mirror matchup is going to be really hard for us, so a Fragmentize is going to help kind of deal with any other enchantments that are on the battlefield, or if they have any kind of Ixalan's Binding. If you guys saw yesterday, we were on stream, and then some guy had 3 Ixalan Binding on a Anointed Procession, a Angel of Sanctions, and a Hidden Stockpile. So it basically completely shut down my entire strategy in game 3. It was awful. The Fragmentize can help deal with that completely, which is awesome for us. Moving on from that, we have 2 Harsh Scrutiny. So this is one of the cards that you kind of want to bring in if you're up against a Locust God strategy, anything in blue-black. You definitely want to say, okay, I think they have Scarab God, and this is going to be a great card to help get rid of it without having to necessarily exile it from the battlefield, because they could use it against you that way, or just kind of get that Scry ability, because it's also good too. Next up though, we have 1 of Solemnity. So there was a 2 of in the Absent token strategy, but I think a 1 of here is actually okay. It's a 3 mana enchantment. Of course, players can get counters, and counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, or enchantments, or lands. So because this isn't really going to affect us that much, Solemnity is going to be a great way to shut out any kind of energy strategy, any kind of counter strategy. It's a lot better against the Sultai counters strategy, any kind of Winding Constrictor counter strategy, than it is an energy strategy. But at the same time, if we get this out on turn 3 every single time against a game 2 energy game, they'll have a really hard time dealing with this unless they have enchantment removal like Appetite for the Unnatural or Crushing Canopy, things like that. But next up from Solemnity, we have 2 Vraska's Contempt. This is again premium removal for those gods that we hate to deal with, like a Scarab God, Hazard the Fervent, things like that, as well as planeswalkers like Chandra, Nissa, and Vraska. And it does give us some passive life gain as well. 2 life is nothing to sneeze at, but it is a little bit enough to kind of have you like say, okay, well, they have a board state full of creatures. I do want to remove that Glorybringer. I will get some power from this back, and I will be taking a hit next turn, but it's worth it because Vraska's Contempt helps mitigate that with that life gain. Moving on from this though, we have 1 Yahini's Expertise. This is almost worth it for a 2 of, since we have Queen's Commission in the deck as well. Yahini's Expertise is a 4 mana. All creatures get -3/-3 at the end of turn, so it is a board wipe technically for us. And you may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So that includes Maverick Fane, that includes Queen's Commission, Hidden Stockpile, Renegade Map, things like that in the game 2 situation, where you can actually gain a lot more momentum than you normally would at the 4-turn slot. Yahini's Expertise is super fun for that, and it can deal, of course, -3/-3 damage to deal damage to a indestructible creature too. Moving on, we have 1 more Fumigate, because having a 4 of in the main board is actually quite fun in the game 2 if we're up against a strategy that goes just as wide as we do, because it basically can say, okay, well, we go just as wide as you do, but we have Bloodcrazed Paladin, so wipe the board and then make a Bloodcrazed Paladin, make a 7/7 or 9/9, and they might actually burn a removal spell on Bloodcrazed Paladin, the next turn another Fumigate, something like that, which is kind of what we want to do actually, because we want to get all that removal out of their hand until their hand is basically just top deck mode. But Fumigate helps us do that. Next up, we have 2 Vana, Butcher of Megan. This is the last 2 cards in the sideboard here. It is a 5 mana 4/4 Vigilance Lifelinker that we can pay 7 life and destroy target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only during your turn. So the reason this is not in the main board, it was in the main board originally for the Bloodcrazed Paladin slot, is that Vana is actually a really huge removal magnet. So it can't really make it usually during game 1, depending on what kind of matchup they're going up against. So if we're up against a removal heavy strategy where they have a lot of good spot removal, then they might actually be boarding some out for some board wide removal, and Vana might be coming in to help deal with that. If we're up against a control strategy, they might want to be boarding in some Chandras, things like that. So Vana's going to be great against that on the play to kind of get against a Chandra to kill it outright just by paying 7 life. And again, we have a lot of creatures gaining life for us in the deck, so paying 7 life is actually not that bad. And of course, we can also get out with an attack first, gain 4 life, then tap Vana in the main phase too. It's super good. But that is the full 7 175, guys. It's actually coming to a decent 82 tickets on MTGOtraders.com, and I think on paper it's around 180 bucks, which is not bad either. But that is the deck. The whole thing is about building up your vampires, swinging out as often as you can, and using Chef at Dunes as your win condition, or maybe in game 2 using Vona or Duresses and Harsh Scrutinies to just basically make our opponents scoop out of frustration. But that is it, guys. Let me know what you think. Do you like the deck? Let me a comment in the comments below. I love responding back to you guys as much as I can. If you have any kind of suggestions on what could make this deck potentially better, let me know in the comments below as well. I think Gifted Aether board might be a great inclusion here in the sideboard or even the main board. That lifelink Death Touch is just so powerful against a lot of strategies, so that could be something to bring into the sideboard or the main board here. But that is it, guys. Like the video if you liked it, of course, and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the little bell right beside the subscribe button to make sure you know when we upload a new video on the channel and when we go live on the stream. I appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you next time.